Ladies and gentlemen, I want to talk to you about municipal bonds. I changed the issuer now for the very first time. The issuer is State of California, State of New York. States are the primary issuers of municipal bonds, but only one of many other multiple municipal issuers that we have. We also have any political subdivision of a state that also issues municipal bonds. Of course, the definition of a political subdivision is a city or a county or a school district that lies within that state that issues municipal bonds as well. Aside from states and political subdivisions of states, we have any what is known as qualified authority, like the New York Port Authority or the New Jersey Sports Authority or the Transit Authority. These are what are known as qualified authorities. Other qualified authorities, educational authorities that might issue bonds, municipal bonds for financing for educational purposes. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
Aside from qualified authorities and states and political subdivisions of states that issue municipal bonds, we also have any commission, Federal Trade Commission, Communications Commission. So look at the multiple municipal issuers that we have. Face $1,000 per bond. And I want you to know that when we talk about municipal bonds, we talk about two different types of municipal bonds that we have. There's the key word. Two types of stock, common and preferred. Two types of variable annuities and fixed annuities in the annuity side. Two types of options, call and put option contracts. Two types of municipal bonds, go and revenue. Let's move them into our home because they represent staggering regulation on NASDAQ. Now, the first type of municipal bond is called a general obligation municipal bond. And it's called a GO bond because when any of those municipal issuers issue and sell general obligation bonds, the proceeds from GO bond sales will be used for general financial obligations and purposes. That's why it's called a GO bond. It has no specific use of the proceeds. Are you with me so far? Yeah. Usually, proceeds from GO bond sales are usually provided to the municipal issuer from GO bond sales for liquidity needs. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
It has general financial purposes and use. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
That's why it's called a GO bond. Now, when investors go out and buy general obligation bonds, the issuer must step in and repay you back your debt service, your interest and your principal to GO bondholders. So the first question becomes on NASDAQ to identify the revenue source, where the municipal issuer is going to specifically get the money to repay back GO bondholders their debt service. And the revenue source comes from two specific areas. 7, bullet 1, the issuer's full faith, guarantee, and credit pledge, their financial obligation and pledge. So what does that mean? It means that when you go out and buy Nassau County bonds, Nassau County is saying to you, when you buy Nassau County general obligation bonds, you have Nassau County's financial guarantee and pledge. We're going to pay you back your interest and principal. That's money. The pledge and the guarantee of the issuer. That's the first source of revenue. The second source of revenue that the municipal issuer will use to repay back your GO bondholders' debt service comes from the municipal issuer's capacity to be able to collect tax revenue money by taxing you on your property. Property taxes. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
This is critical now. They are both sources of revenue. We tend to treat the second, not the first, as the only source of revenue here because you only see property tax revenue money as tangible revenue when the financial guarantee of the issuer is revenue. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
Let's talk about the property tax rate that's levied by the municipal issuer on all of the homeowners who live in that municipality. And that's where that money comes from, along with the issuer's financial guarantee to repay you back your GO bondholders' debt service. The actual tax rate that is taxing property value is called an ad valorem tax. What is an ad valorem tax? It is a tax only on real property. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
And the actual rate that's used is called a mill rate. The mill rate is the rate that's levied on property values, which is an ad valorem tax, that will collect tax revenue money to the municipal issuer. That, along with their full faith and credit, are the sources of revenue that back GO bondholders' debt service repayment. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
Now, let's talk about the benchmark mill rate that's used so you understand how property taxes are collected and how they're generated. The benchmark is that 1 mill rate. Not a 10 mil rate, not a 20 mil rate. 1 mil rate will collect to the issuer 0.001% for $1,000 of property value. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
That's the benchmark. So now what does that really mean? Well, let me show you how a municipal issuer can collect tax revenue money just for one home in this community with thousands of homes. Are you with me so far?
Yeah.
What if I told you that there was this one home in Nassau County? This one house had what was known as an assessed property value of $300,000. Assessed property value is what is taxed. Not full property value. What is assessed is what is taxed. Are you with me so far?
Yeah.
This house has an assessed property value, not a market value, an assessed property value to be worth $300,000. Nassau County uses a 3 mill rate. 1 mill rate will collect 0.001% for $1,000 of property value. Are you with me so far?
Yeah.
We have $300,000 of property value and a 3 mill rate that's used. This one house is going to generate $900 in tax revenue. That's how money is collected by a municipal issuer on one singular home. Now let's look out there into the entire community. All of the homes in this municipality. If we look at all of the property value in Nassau County, and I told you that it's all worth $250 million, all of the property in Nassau County, the entire county, this $250 million is called full property valuation. Full property value is not what is taxed. What is taxed is assessed property value. Are you with me?
Yes.
So I give you full property valuation in the entire community, in the entire county, to be worth $250 million. Now I further tell you that Nassau County will use a 40% basis of assessment. The basis of assessment is the percentage of full property value that will be taxed. Are you with me?
Yes.
40% of $250 million means $100 million of what is known as assessed property value. What is assessed is what is subject to tax. Are you with me?
Yes.
They're going to use a 20 mill rate. At a 20 mill rate, taxing $100 million of assessed property value with a 40% basis of assessment on $250 million of full property valuation, Nassau County is going to collect $2 million in property tax revenue money. That's where the money comes from. That's how it's computed and collected. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
Along with the full faith and credit that's used as a revenue source to repay you back your debt service when you buy GO bonds. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
So what do you think is going to happen? The municipal issuer is going to come down to Wall Street and say, Goldman Sachs, we want you to raise us $500 million, $1.5 billion, and perform an underwriting for a GO mini bond IPO. Well, what's Wall Street care about? Means it's true. Wall Street cares about Nassau County's capacity to be able to collect enough money in net revenue from property taxes, along with their financial picture, to be able to repay back GO bondholders their debt service. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
So what do you think Wall Street's going to do? The Goldman Sachses of the world are going to take that municipal issuer through what is called the GO bond analysis before we will bring them public. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
And so the first component in the GO bond analysis that we care about more importantly than anything is Nassau County's tax collection history. Nassau County, for the last 25 years, have you been able to collect taxes? Because if Nassau County cannot demonstrate to Wall Street the capacity to be able to generate and collect consistent tax revenue money, we're not going to feel too confident about issuing this GO mini bond IPO, because that's one of two primary sources of revenue that's used to repay back GO bondholders their debt service. And remember, this is a bond offering. You may not be defaulted on. You with me so far?
Yes.
So the first component of the GO bond analysis is the tax collection history of the issuer. Are you with me?
Yes.
Now, what's being taxed? The property values, am I right?
Yes.
So what do you think the second component has to be analyzed for in an investment banking due diligence is? Which way those property values are going. Are they rising? Are they falling? Because those are the values that are going to be subject to a tax liability. It's going to generate the source of revenue to repay you back your debt service. Am I right?
Yes.
So the second component of GO bond analysis is to take a look at those property values that are going to be subject to a tax liability. Are you with me so far?
Yes. Yes.
We care about how much liquidity there is in this community. When we look at how much money there is in the community, are you with me so far?
Yes.
We look at Series 7, the per capita income per household. Because the per capita income per household measures the liquidity of a municipality. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
Three components in order of priority for an investment banking GO bond analysis. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
That's not enough. We also care about how much leverage, how much debt this issuer owes. Why do we care about that question? Well, because what if I told you that those property values, watch this, have been falling, as you know they have been. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
And what if I told you that the issuer has debt that's still outstanding and due and owing? That 7, 10 years ago, they went to those property values and taxed. Now this issuer wants to issue another GO muni bond IPO based upon today's falling property values. Maybe those property values are not high enough to be able to support a further tax increase to generate further tax revenue to pay new debt service. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
In order to determine whether those property values are strong enough to be able to be further taxed to be able to support further debt service regarding a new GO bond IPO, we have to take a look at the debt statement of the issuer to determine their outstanding level of leverage. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
And when we look at the debt statement, we perform a debt statement analysis. We look at three components of the debt statement of an issuer. We look at their 7 direct debt, 7 net direct debt, 7 overlapping debt. Direct debt is all notes and all bonds that are outstanding and due and owing by the issuer. That gives us a picture of how much they owe overall. Are you with me?
Yes.
But look up, please. This is a GO bond analysis. In that direct debt statement analysis, all notes and all bonds that's outstanding that they owe, part of that debt statement analysis of direct debt is revenue bond debt that's outstanding that we want to remove from the debt statement picture because this is only for a GO bond analysis. Because revenue bond debt is not supported and repaid with tax revenue money. Am I right?
Yes.
That's supported and repaid to revenue bondholders in their debt service repayment by the user fees or the toll revenue monies that are being generated from a particular project. And so if revenue bond debt is part of the direct debt statement analysis, we want to remove it out of the debt statement analysis to just get a reduced level of leverage that this issuer owes as part of a GO bond analysis. And that's why we take a look at the second component of the debt statement analysis called net direct debt. What is net direct debt? The net direct debt statement is direct debt, all notes and all bonds they owe, inclusive of revenue and GO bond debt outstanding, minus net of any revenue bond debt that can be removed from the debt statement analysis because this is a GO picture. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
Which would then give us in the net direct debt statements components a reduced level of outstanding leverage because it's subtracting out and removing out revenue bond debt. Am I right?
Yes.
And then we might want to take a look to determine and see if this issuer has experienced in the past or in the future any overlapping debt. Now, overlapping debt is the debt of one issuer that might be overlapping into the debt of another political subdivision of the issuer to see if their leverage is expanding. An example of overlapping debt lies exactly where under the debt statement picture that we looked at that I told you we would refer to in this particular example. Let's take a look at exactly what I mean. Refer to the body of work. Broward County, Florida. Right there, I gave you a political subdivision of the state of Florida. Am I right?
Yes.
Look at me. Broward County goes GO muni bond IPO. Now, when Broward County goes around and starts generating and collecting tax revenue money along with Broward County's guarantee, financial guarantee, they're going to use that money to repay back Broward County GO bondholders their debt service. Am I right?
Yes.
So they're pretty much going to tax everybody in the property values that live in the county. Am I right?
Yes.
Look at me, quick. The city of Fort Lauderdale lies within Broward County. The city of Fort Lauderdale is a political subdivision of Broward County, which is a political subdivision of the state of Florida. Am I right?
Yes.
So when Broward County, the issuer here of this bond offering, goes around and starts to tax the property values of the residents of the people that live in Broward County, they're also going to be taxing the residents of the city of Fort Lauderdale because the city lies within the county. Now, what does the city of Fort Lauderdale, along with those residents, have to do with this bond offering? This bond offering is being issued by Broward County. But because the city of Fort Lauderdale lies within the county, that means that the residents of the city of Fort Lauderdale are going to pay a portion of Broward County's debt service. Am I right?
Yes.
This is a classic example where the debt of one issuer, Broward County, is overlapping with the debt of a second political subdivision, the residents of the city of Fort Lauderdale, because the city lies within the county. We would take a look as part of a complete debt statement analysis to determine if this issuer is experienced in the past any overlapping debt. So a complete debt statement analysis of direct debt, net direct debt, and overlapping debt, along with the tax collection history, the property values, and which way they're moving, and the liquidity of the issuer is required from Wall Street's point of view before we will allow this issuer to continue the steps of engaging in the green light of a GO muni bond underwriting an IPO. I think what you see is going on comes to full circle in the picture right now. What we're really establishing is all of the regulations that the issuer must meet before Wall Street will allow them to continue the steps of going public. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
Prerequisite requirements. Well, that's on the GO bond side. But moving into Nassau County has also told Goldman Sachs, listen, I got to tell you that we have a septic system and reservoir system here in Nassau County. There was a drought many, many years ago, I don't know if you recall it, where I think it was 9 or almost 10 years ago in this tri-state area, this is true, where we hadn't had rain for almost 3 months. It's almost 2 2/3 months. And the winter prior to that summer, the reservoirs were below capacity because of El Nino, and it didn't snow too much. And so we were suffering what were called drought restrictions that were imposed by municipalities on homeowners. I don't know if you remember this. And those drought restrictions said this: if you had an even number home, you were only allowed to water your lawn for up to a maximum of 2 hours on even days. If you had an odd number home, on odd days. If you got caught watering your lawn with an even home on an odd day, the first was a $100 fine, second time was a $500 offense. So, so far, those drought restrictions were very tight. And in the tri-state area, there was more than $7 or $8 billion in property damage just among 17 counties alone in Jersey and the tri-state area because of that drought. Are you with me so far? Yes. So Nassau County says to Goldman Sachs, listen, thanks a lot for getting that GO underwriting working, and we're doing the due diligence and providing you with all that you need for that GO bond analysis of $1.5 billion. But Goldman Sachs, listen, we want to replace our entire sewage system. We want to build a new project. Are you with me so far? Yes. This project is going to cost $2.5 billion. And those that will benefit and use this project are the residents in Nassau County. I mean, what if Nassau County said to Goldman Sachs, you know what we always wanted and felt that we needed logistically? We always wanted a bridge that linked the north side of the county to the south side of the county. We don't have one, and we want you to raise us $5 billion so we can build that bridge. What we're qualifying is the second type of municipal bond. It's called a revenue bond. The revenue bond's use of proceeds are to be used to build a particular project, whether it's a bridge, in which case that would be called a transportation revenue bond. Are you with me so far? Yes. Or to build a project like a sewer system or a water system or a reservoir. Are you with me so far? Yes. Now, we have to ask the first question like NASDAQ will. Identify the revenue source, where the municipal issuer is going to get the money from to repay back revenue bondholders their debt service. And it's from the user fees or the toll revenue monies that the project generates. Are you with me so far? Yes. That will be used to repay back your debt service. Are you with me so far? Yes. But the problem is this bridge hasn't been built yet. So how can Nassau County demonstrate with financial accuracy to Wall Street that a project, a bridge if you will, that hasn't been built, hopefully financed with the proceeds of revenue bond sales, are you with me so far, is going to generate the necessary revenue, net revenue amount that will be sufficient to repay back revenue bondholders their debt service? Well, there's only one way. The issuer is required, as part of a revenue bond analysis, to hire consulting engineers to come in and perform a feasibility study, which is a flow of funds analysis of a project that is yet to be built, that will determine that if this project does get financed with the proceeds of revenue bond sales, it will generate the necessary level of net revenue that will be sufficient to repay back revenue bondholders their debt service. In the feasibility study, what you're looking at are 4 very powerful areas of regulation that are on NASDAQ called a flow of funds analysis. This is a feasibility study that was done for Easy Pass on the Garden State Parkway and many other projects that I'm sure we can reference to. First is that the consulting engineers are going to look at this potential bridge that would be built. Are you with me so far? Yes. And estimate, based upon their feasibility study, how much expected gross revenue this bridge would generate in the form of toll revenue money. Am I right? Yes. So the first component of the feasibility study is called the gross revenue that is expected to be generated from a project that is yet to be built. Are you with me so far? Yes. The next part of the feasibility study and the flow of funds analysis is, by consulting engineers, the costs to maintain that bridge, which are the operating and maintenance costs. Are you with me so far? Yes. That will generate Series 7, Bullet 3, the net revenue that is expected to be generated from the project. And that's where the money comes from then to be used to pay the interest and principal to revenue bondholders. Are you with me so far? Yes. And then if there's any excess money left over after the bondholders' debt service were paid, on the revenue bond side, it would go into a debt service reserve. And so now I want you to look at me. I'm going to give you these 4 areas of regulation built into this feasibility study and flow of funds analysis for the 7. First, you need to know the components of the first 3 accounts in a feasibility study flow of funds analysis. Series 7, Bullet 1. Gross revenue minus O&M equal net revenue. 7. I want you to take a look into this feasibility study and flow of funds analysis that has been performed by consulting engineers. Look at me carefully and tell me from what component are monies allocated and pledged from to pay the debt service to bondholders in a revenue bond offering. The component is Series 7 net revenue. Net is gross minus the maintenance cost of the project. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
Series 7 bullet 2, monies are allocated from net revenue to pay the debt service to bondholders in a revenue bond offering. Feasibility study. If after the bondholders were paid with the net revenue generated from the project, there's excess revenue. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
They're going to ask you on the 7 where that excess revenue was going. You're going to tell them to put it into a debt service reserve. 7. We're not done. When we looked at fundamental analysis, we saw many ratios there. Are you with me?
Yes.
We said that a ratio was a division of two financial components. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
I want you to take a look at this very specific ratio built into the feasibility flow of funds analysis. When you divide the net revenue by the debt service of this particular project's feasibility, are you with me so far?
Yes.
You get what is called a coverage ratio. A coverage ratio expresses in the form of a ratio the ability to cover a certain expenditure. What's the expense that has to be covered here? The debt service to bondholders in the form of the repayment of interest and principal. Where does that money come from? The net revenue from the project. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
So this is called a debt service coverage ratio. That ratio has to be a positive ratio provided by the consulting engineers to Wall Street in the feasibility study before Wall Street will allow this issuer to continue the steps of engaging in the green light process of going into a revenue bond underwriting IPO. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
So let's take a look. I give you estimated numbers from a feasibility study of consulting engineers of a project that is yet to be built. They have said in this feasibility study the expected gross revenue this project to generate is $8 million. They said O&M is $2 million. That will mean that net revenue is $6 million. What if debt service was $3 million? Look at the coverage ratio, it's 2 to 1. They have 2 times the amount of money in debt service to pay in net revenue to pay 1 time the amount of money in debt service, and the excess is $3 million. That is a positive debt service coverage ratio. This is a positive feasibility study, and that is a requirement prerequisite before Wall Street will allow the issuer to continue the steps of engaging in a revenue bond IPO. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
So, I want you to know where I went last night. Last night I went to the town hall in my town, and they asked for a residential vote, residents' votes, on the ability of the school system that my children go to and I live in to issue a $27 million bond offering. Now the question becomes, why did I have to go and vote? Well, they would have voted without me, and I wanted my voice to be heard. Well, why does it matter for voter approval? Which type of revenue underwriting require voter approval? Not in the revenue bond offering. It's my property taxes that are going to go up, and they have to have my approval to increase my property taxes, because that's where the source of revenue is going to be going to issue what last night? A general obligation bond offering. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
So the requirement after positive feasibility study is done on the revenue bond side, for the GO bond side is 7. 2/3 voter approval is required in order for the municipal issuer to issue a general obligation bond, because it's our property taxes that have to be approved by the residents of those homes. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
So I'd like you to assume, look at me, that this feasibility study is working and it's positive. I'd like you to assume that we have 2/3 voter approval for the issuance of a GO bond IPO, and that GO bond analysis will take time, and it's under workings. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
In the process? But I got to tell you something. If you look at your municipality, where you live, and I look at, when I go home every night and I drive into my town where I live, I look at my municipality like a corporation, and that's the way I want you to look at now. They have a police force that has to get paid. Do you have any parks in your hometown where you live? Because they have to be maintained. What day is trash? What day is when the trees come down for leaf pickup? What day is for recycling? I mean, these services have to be paid for. If you look at your municipality and treat your municipality like a corporation, they need constant liquidity. Now, They can't touch any of the money from revenue bond sales because that's earmarked to build a specific project and use of proceeds. But they can use some of the GO bond money because that has general financial liquidity needs for the use of proceeds general purposes. Am I right?
Yes.
But do you have any idea how long it would take for the municipal issuer to get some of the money from a GO bond sale? The GO bond analysis could take more than a year. They need money now. Where can the municipal issuer raise money today to use that money immediately? Listen carefully to me. That can be used for the ability to finance current municipal operating expenses in lieu of long-term monies to be raised down the road. I'll tell you what they can issue. They can issue municipal notes. Municipal notes, Series 7, are short-term debt instruments. I use the word short-term. If I say short-term, that means 10 years or less. Distinguishing characteristics between short-term and long-term is 10 years or less or 10 years or greater. Notes, bullet 1, NASDAQ have a maturity of 2 to 10 years. Bonds are long-term, 10 years or greater. Am I right?
Yes.
They pay Series 7, bullet 2, annual interest income to the muni note holder, as opposed to semi-annual interest income to the bondholder. Am I right?
Yes.
Municipal notes, please listen to me very carefully, can be issued immediately by the municipal issuer. And they could raise money with muni note sales and use that money infused into the municipality to finance current municipal operating expenses. And based upon the different types of muni notes that we have, secondary revenue coming from the note sales, from sales taxes, excise taxes, or possibly federal subsidized monies. The different types of municipal notes that we have are 7 TANs, RANs, BANs, GANs, CLNs. TANs, RANs, BANs, GANs, CLNs. You listen to me today. I'm going to sing it and impugn it in your soul. This is big time 7. Are you with me?
Yes.
Tax anticipation notes, revenue anticipation notes, the one that the 7 loves, the bond anticipation note, CLNs, construction loan notes, GANs, not in your book, grant anticipation notes. These are short-term municipal notes, sold immediately. Raise capital for the municipal issuer to use that money to generate money for general financial purposes and current operating expenses. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
Let's break them down. The TAN, similar to the RAN, tax anticipation notes and revenue anticipation notes are short-term municipal notes, and of course, raised on anticipation of future tax receipts from property tax money or other taxes. Look at the BAN. That's the bond anticipation note. That's issued for the same purpose as the TAN, except the anticipated revenues come from other than general tax receipts, but rather from federal or state subsidized funding. And then, of course, GANs are grant anticipation notes from federal grant money down the road. Are you with me so far? Right. And the CLNs, which are construction loan notes, short-term municipal notes that are used to finance current municipal operating expenses that will eventually be used to fund the bond, funded by a bond issue for short-term construction projects. Are you with me so far? TANs, RANs, BANs, GANs, CLNs. TANs, RANs, BANs, GANs, CLNs. TANs, RANs, BANs, GANs, CLNs. Can you say that? Oh, come on, give me a break. Say it again. TANs, RANs, BANs, GANs, CLNs. Look at me. We don't care how municipal notes are rated. But what we do care about before we break, and this is the final point before we break, are the definition of insured municipal bonds. You got to look at me. It's not what you think. The definition of an insured muni is not on NASDAQ. Watch this area. The definition, however, of an insured municipal bond says this, whether it's an insured GO muni or an insured revenue municipal bond. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
If for some particular reason, please look up, the primary source of revenue that backs GO bondholders' debt service repayment should be insufficient over the life of that bond offering. If the financial guarantee of the issuer is in question. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
And if they don't raise the amount of money in property tax revenues that they were expected and anticipated to generate, to avoid any potential default, because that would automatically cause default, am I right?
Yes.
If the primary source of revenue is insufficient to be able to pay back debt service, bondholders would experience potential default, am I right?
Yes.
You can't be defaulted on as a general creditor. So if the primary source of revenue here in a GO bond offering should be insufficient to repay back GO bondholders' debt service, and furthermore, on the same point, if the net revenue from the project that was expected to be generated from the feasibility study should be insufficient. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
Maybe the feasibility study was wrong. Maybe that net revenue is not there. Are you with me so far?
Yes.
To avoid any potential default in the repayment of GO or revenue bondholders' debt service, a major insurance company of significant creditworthiness is built into these insured bond offerings that acts as a second source of revenue that's ready to step in should the primary source of revenue be insufficient to repay you back your debt service to avoid any potential default. And that's why they're called insured municipal bonds. The definition of an insured muni has an insurance company of significant creditworthiness acting as a second source of revenue should the primary source of debt service repayment be insufficient to repay you back your debt service. And because of the quality of these insurance companies, are you with me so far, their creditworthiness, and the fact that they're acting as a second source of revenue to repay back debt service to bondholders, that qualifies as an insured bond. Are you with me so far? An insured municipal bond, which would qualify the insured municipal bond series 747, AAA rated status. First question, NASDAQ is the rating on insured munis, AAA. The second question is a little bit more difficult. Are you with me?
Yes.
Second paragraph under insured munis. They want the specific names of the insurance carriers that back as a second source of revenue debt service repayment if the primary source of revenue should be insufficient. They are Series 7 Bullet 1 and back the American Municipal Assurance Bond Corporation. One of my all-time favorites coming at you right now. MBIA. MBIA. I know. I know. The Municipal Bond Investors Assurance Corporation. MBIA. Big, B-G-I-G, not in the body of your work, B-G-I-C. B-G-I-C, Bond Guarantee Investor Corporation, B-G-I-C, Bond Guarantee Investor Corporation, and of course, FIG, F-G-I-C, the Financial Guarantee Insurance Company. And back, MBIAC, Big FIG, and back, MBIAC, Big FIG. Tans, Rands, Bands, Gans, CLNs. I got a lot of songs for you today. Well, we're going to take a break right now, and I'm going to tell you why. I want you to know what's going to happen when you come back. We have now established a positive feasibility study when you come back. I'm telling you, feasibility study is positive. I'm telling you, geo-bond analysis and debt statement review has been positive, and this issuer has provided Wall Street with all of the requirements, met all of the due diligence that Wall Street could ask for to engage in the underwriting of an IPO. You with me so far? Yes. The stage is now set. All the preliminary requirements have been met, and when you come back, it's time to go public. The primary market for municipal bonds. It's time to go underwriting IPO. I'll see you in 10 minutes for the public offering process. Take lunch. Thank you. Get ready. Lunch is 10 minutes today. That's it.